Most of you probably have pets, and if you don't, you may want one in the future. I own pets, and I've done a good amount of research on how to care for them. So today I will be going into detail on how to take care of 3 different animals slash pets in particular, because I own them and have taken good care of them. We have leopard geckos, cats, and we have dogs. First up, we have these little guys. So first off, I'm going to talk about food for these guys. They'll eat mostly insects like crickets, mealworms, waxworms, and even cockroaches, but as they get bigger. And they can even eat small mice when they're bigger as well. I use crickets and waxworms at the moment because mine are still pretty young. These are waxworms. For anyone who's curious as to what they are, they're pretty gross, but they like them. So they stay in a cup here, and you put them in the fridge, and they'll still survive in the fridge, but they'll just have to get thawed out before they get eaten. But that's what they are. So just as a side note, mealworms might cause impaction on younger geckos because they have a harder outer shell in comparison to like those waxworms that I just showed you. So maybe stay away from those until they're a little older, and I'll explain what impaction is in another segment of this speech. So regarding calcium and vitamin powder, it is something that can be put onto their food to make them healthier and to make sure they're getting adequate nutrients. Calcium is super important because it helps with a number of things. First, it helps with regeneration of tails if theirs has fallen off, helps maintain and grow teeth, helps prevent life-threatening disease such as hypocalcemia, which causes lethargy and muscle cramps in the geckos, as well as metabolic bone disease, which causes deformities of leg bones and oftentimes arched spines. Now, vitamin powder helps with absorbing this calcium to make sure that there is no excess buildup. So when applying this calcium and vitamins, at first I only use worms for this because they like to hunt the crickets, so I just throw the crickets in there. But first I'll throw them into the calcium and like twirl them around a little bit in there to get a bit on there. And then I'll pour the vitamin because they can't really fit in there. But I'll pour the bit of vitamin powder onto it as well, as you can see. And that's how I do it, and I just feed it to them with these. So for what you want to keep them in, at least a 10-gallon tank, but I'd say personally a 20-gallon tank just so they have more space to roam around in. That's just what I use. So now moving on to substrate, and what substrate is basically just whatever you want to put at the bottom of the tank. Some examples are carpet, paper towels, tiles, sand, and what I use, which is what is called Eco Earth, and it's basically made up of husks of coconut and basically made up all of coconut. And the reason I use it is because it's safe to ingest for them. So if they eat some while trying to catch a cricket, for example, it won't cause any problems internally. The other best option is probably paper towels because it's easy to clean and it won't cause any health implications. Things to stay away from are probably carpet and sand because carpet can cause geckos' teeth and fingers to fall off if they get stuck. As well as there's an example I read once where some got in the teeth or the jaw and it locked the jaw shut so that it couldn't eat, which is not something you want. And sand, because if it's ingested it can cause impaction, and what impaction is, like I was talking about earlier, if large amounts of sand have been ingested, it will build up and prevent defecation, which will obviously cause problems and it can be pretty fatal. For heating, you want a hot side and a cool side of the whole tank, and you're going to want to remain at around 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit and to have a humidity of 20 to 40%. I keep track of it using this digital thermometer. You're going to want 2 lamps as well for normal daylight to keep their day-night cycle intact, and a UV one as well because the UV helps prevent metabolic bone disease, which is something I explained earlier. And as you can see, I have both right here. I have the UV here, I believe, and the daylight one right here. So I just use this dual lamp thing because 2 lamps is kind of annoying to deal with. For keeping humidity at a good level, if it's not at a good level, and you see that with the thermometer if you have a thermometer, but you could just get a spray bottle and just spray water in it, and it doesn't matter what kind of spray bottle, but if this is used for something else, you're probably going to want to clean it out before you use it inside the cage. Lastly, you're going to want something for them to hide in, so they have somewhere to go and they just don't want to be seen, I guess, because my cat likes to look at them and sometimes they probably get scared of that, so they just want to hide and just do whatever in there. So now moving on to the cat portion of this video. They're probably the easiest pet to take care of, maybe besides a fish. So that's what they have going for them. For cat food, there's dry food and wet food. There's a lot of brands, but I don't really want to say that it doesn't matter, but it honestly probably doesn't matter what brand it is, just as long as your cat likes it. So there's kitten food and adult food. So from around 4 to 7 months after they drink their mom's milk, obviously for the first 4, they'll eat kitten food from the 4 to 7. Then from 7 months to however long they live, obviously feed them adult food. Also make sure they always have a water dish at their disposal and make sure there's always water in it. And you can give them treats, but obviously not too often. You don't want to give them too beefy. So for their entertainment, or for their toys really, you're going to want to have things to scratch, things to chase, like lasers, things to get up high, and basically almost anything. I've given my cat a straw and he's played with it for like 30 minutes, so really anything is a toy for them. This is also something you can get, something that like to scratch. As you can see, scratch it up a good amount. You just get it at like PetSmart or something, pretty cheap. So moving on from that, we have, you might make sure they have a litter box and clean and fill as necessary, and make sure it's always in the same spot at all times. Make sure you have a bed for them, no matter if they use it or not. It's alright, but also have a carrier for vet visits. And speaking of the vet, make sure they're registered and have all their shots, and make sure they're all in the right order. And getting them spayed or neutered is also a good idea, but it's kind of pricey. Now moving on to dogs. Before getting a dog, make sure you understand what you're getting into, because they take a lot of care. I'd say they're almost like a child, honestly. They are very social animals, so keep that in mind. Make sure if they need room, they have it, and be respectful, no matter how much they could be a pain. They don't exactly know what they're doing, so yelling at them is not something that should happen very often, because they do understand emotions if they understand anything. And hitting them is probably never something that should happen. For food, it's the same with cats. There is puppy and adult food, so just make sure you transfer them correctly and make sure that they're not eating adult food or puppy food when they don't need to be. For toys, they like squeaky toys, chew toys, ropes, tennis balls, anything they can really get a hold of. As for if you want to crate train, I don't know much about it, and we at our house personally don't do that with our dog, but if you want to do that, you could look into it. I just don't know much about it. Make sure you have a bed, same with the cat. Make sure you also have a collar with your info on it and a leash. If they get lost or something, you can be tracked down to you. Also, the leash is important and collar is important to make sure you can take them to the vet without having to, like, it's just easier to get them into the car and whatever and whatnot. And at the vet, you'll do the normal shots in order, and also the registration, and make sure people know you have a dog. For potty training, make sure they understand that the bathroom is outside and not somewhere in the house, unless you have pads down for them and you taught them that that's where they need to go to the bathroom. In overall obedience training, there are classes you can take your dog to get trained by a professional, or you could take on that challenge on your own, but we personally just took my dog to classes. So that wraps it up. Thanks for watching the speech if you watched it, and I hope you learned a thing or two.